All right, hi there. I am creating this recording in order to create a training series of trainings. This first part is going to be sort of an introduction. Um, I'll cover sort of the beginning slides, and then sort of the first part I always go into whenever I'm setting up to do a report. So let's jump right into it. All right, so this first part here is this tab at the bottom here is called Initial Data. So this is just your very basic information for the report. Um, this is important in that the information on this tab is shared throughout the entire document. So for instance, this Alberta Phillips here, you see that's the customer name. On this tab, it's pulling from that first tab here. So if I delete that, you can see it disappears on the rest of these tabs here. So that's bad. So don't ever mess with this information here. Make sure it's always entered and make sure you don't ever do anything to take it away. Second part here is I highlight these yellow. These are the parts that need to be filled in by whoever's creating the report. So this first part, square footage, is calculated manually by the assessor. So I will pull up my information here. So I calculated this myself using the sketch that I created at the house site on the daily inspection. It's very simple. You just do the length and width of all the walls. It can be a little tricky, but if you take your time and with a little practice, it gets easier. So the size of this house, after adding up all the different areas, it's 2,087. So we'll go back here, simply enter that, type it on the keyboard. Ceiling height, this is your average ceiling height for the whole house. In this case, it was all 8-foot ceilings. Funding source, this can vary a little bit, but typically it's going to be DOE. So just select DOE, continue on. Next is your date. This one was on July 9th. Assessor is yourself, whoever did this, or whoever you're training under. That's me. And then company, whoever you're working for. All right. And this is the company itself, not BakerRipley. So this is for my company, it's going to be ColtCo Inspections. All right, next is this tab here. This is the LIHEAP priority list tab. This is more like a summary for the entire report. You can see all this information here, all these little zeros. At the end of the report, these are all going to be filled in. This is all going to say whether we need to install things there, whether we need to do anything there, or whether it's not recommended. Next, this is the leverage tool. This is more summary information. This isn't used by the assessors very much, but used more for the contractors and the people that work in the office for doing review purposes. All right, next is the this DOE tab here. This is for single family site built homes. You can see that's what that little acronym there is for. You're going to answer these questions based on the home. First few times you do this, it's probably going to be a little bit tricky. Make sure you follow this, but once you know the rules, it's very simple. So I'm going to enter true. You can either do the drop down here, select true, or if you just hit T and then enter, it'll automatically fill in for you. Next, again, another summary. Don't worry about all this. A lot of this is kind of this is all the notes that you're going to enter in the work order at the end of the inspection, at the end of the report, rather. So don't worry about these too much right now. All right, so that's the sort of initial data as these light green tabs at the front. Next is going to be these yellow tabs, and this is where we start to get into sort of more pertinent information. All right, so scroll over. First part is a waiver. If you need to get this signature, the ladies in the office are going to tell you if you need to do that. Next is, and that's sort of a sometimes you need it, sometimes it's already been done kind of thing. Next is this series of these several pages here, these first 5 right here, these are all strictly just signatures. There's not a lot of data or information we need to enter there, except we just need to, we basically do these with the client. We sit down and enter this information. All right. So the first is just signature from the client, signature from the inspector, and then you're answering these questions. You'll get more information on these during the inspection. Same for this one. These are all initials to this information that's been presented to the client, signatures. Radon, you'll select the appropriate thing here, and then more signatures. The health and safety tab, this one actually does need to be filled in. I typically have basic information, just everything good, basically no problems. And then I adjust as necessary if there's anything that I observe in the house that needs to be corrected. So if your furnace was broken, you would say furnace inoperable, recommend, and then your recommendation would be like evaluation for repair or replacement. Same thing if you had any kind of moisture problems, plumbing leaks, anything like that, you would list it there. And then this one in particular, this row down here, lead paint, this one needs to be looked at every single inspection, because if the house was built before 1978, you need to acknowledge that and say it's possible. House built in 1955, for example, or if it's not, if it's built after 1978, you would put, I've already got NA entered there, and you would adjust it to say whatever year this house is built. This was built 2011, so I'll put not applicable, 2011 build, that's it. And again, initials, signatures. Moving on. Another one, this is the mold form. This one, this house did not have any mold, so I put none observed up here. And then more signatures. All right, now we're getting into the actual meat of the report. So what I like to do is after I go through the signature pages and just basically do a quick entering all the signatures, make sure I've got all that information entered. I like to go over here to the CAS info tab. That's right here. This is usually where I start. And this is where we'll start to enter the actual information from the inspection. All right, so I did go through and I highlighted yellow for all the things that need to be filled in on every report. Some of this is going to expand. For instance, down here you've got appliances. If you have 2 appliances, you'll use it here. If you have multiple, obviously you can use the rest of the space here. All right, first off, how many floors does the house have? This one had 1. Heating type, what kind of heat does the house have? In this case, it was natural gas. What kind of cooktop do they have? In this case, let me pull it up here. In this case, it was a gas stove. You can see right there. So very simple, natural gas. And then hot water, what type? In this case, it was actually an electric water heater. You can see right there. Okay. So you can either select the drop down, or if you just hit E and then enter, it'll create the entry for you. All right, next, you're going to answer all these sort of random questions up here at the top before you move on. Were there any gas leaks present when you did the inspection? In this case, no. If you do smell gas during inspection, you're going to pause and you're going to look for any kind of gas leaks. Does the dryer vent outside? Yes, it does. Was a hot H2O heater inside? No, it was not. All right. That's very simple. Is it inside the building envelope, like in a closet in the main house, or is it, in this case, it was in the attic? So no, it's not inside. So that's just a simple question. Is it inside or outside? All right. Ambient CO in the house. You're going to have zeros here. You're going to wear your ambient CO meter during the inspection, and if you have that meter go off at any time, you're going to record it, and then you would enter something else here. But most of the time, it's going to be 0. All right. Next, this part, CVA adequate. This means combustion, ventilation, air. So basically, does the furnace get enough air to keep the fire going? Yes, it does. It was in the attic. The attic was well ventilated, so we had no problems. Does the water heater have enough ventilation? Well, in this case, it was electric, so it doesn't need it, so we'll put not applicable. Does the does the fireplace have enough air? In this case, it did not have a fireplace, so not applicable. Not applicable. All right, so you're just answering, does this appliance get enough air to keep the fire going? Yes or no? All right, next, the oven. This is going to be your oven parts per million. All right, so next, we're going to go to this form. This is a series of readings that were taken during the inspection. Let me show you what that looks like real quick. I already went through and put them all on one page, but this is the reading that was taken from the machine that I've been using recently. This can come in several different forms. There's different machines, different. You can also have it printed out on little pieces of paper, and you can save. You can either tape that to a single page and take a photo of it, or a scan. There's different ways to do this, but the way I do it, just for simplicity, is I just do screenshots and save it all to one page. Looks like this. All right. So you're going to come in here. You can see this is the stove and oven information up here at the top. So you're going to go through, and of all this information here, this one right here is carbon monoxide, CO. You see that's a 3. And then this one here is a 73. So we'll go back to our report. 3, 73. Back. Left front was 3 and 6. 3, 6. And then we did have a center burner, so that's 27. So this is a spot for the center burner if you have one. So this one's 27. And then also take note here, this is, you can see this says pre and post for each of these lines. This one's pre and post right here. The reason is this is pre-weatherization and post-weatherization. All right. So this is what we get at the initial inspections, are these ones that I've got highlighted here. And then at the final inspection, they'll do another reading to make sure it's still safe. All right. So we're only entering the pre-weatherization information. All right. Now this one's going to be for the oven. We'll go back up here. Oven. This one was very high at 536. So I'm going to enter that, and then I'll show you in just a moment where you can get that information, whether or not those are high or not. Okay. So the oven was 536. You come down here, if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you can see this little table. I'm going to expand that so you can see it a little better. It's in the way, but there we go. All right. So you can see oven right here, 225 parts per million as measured. So 225 parts per million as measured. So what that means when it says as measured, that is strictly just carbon monoxide. All right. So that's that number right there. In this case, we have 536. So this oven actually failed our test. All right. So I'm going to take a note, and we're going to enter that as something that needs to be corrected whenever we come out to do the weatherization. All right, because we got a high reading, that means we need to adjust the appliance to make sure it's safe, so that when we're done, we're not leaving the customer in an unsafe situation. All right. Next thing is you see this both the center burner and the right rear stove. Right here, 73 and 27. The limit for stovetop is 25 parts per million. Just recently, I realized that that's actually not listed here. It is listed somewhere in our regulations, but for whatever reason, it does not appear on this list. But just know, stovetop burners, the limit is 25 parts per million. All right, so that's 25 CO. All right. Okay, so next, I like to just continue on since I'm in this area. Move on down. Here's the water temp. In this case, we're going to get your water temp when you're doing the inspection. It's just a simple check. You turn the water on at the kitchen or the bathroom, and then you check it. In this case, it was 117. All right. Next is temp adjusted question mark. So what this is saying, you can see this says 110 to 120. So that's the temperature we want the water heater to be at year round, is between 110 and 120 degrees. Okay. So when we check it in the house, if it's above that, we're going to turn it down. If it's in that range, it's good. Typically, it's not going to be below that, but if you don't have any water heater, you'll take note of that and you'll take action if needed. All right. In this case, it was 117, so it was good. So we're going to select none within range. So we didn't take action because it was good. All right. Moving on. Real quick, this little part here, I've got this highlighted yellow. This is called the worst case setup. So this is if you need to do a worst case test for your combustion appliance. That's not always necessary. It is one of those things that you do it if it's necessary based on the house. If the usually it's like the water heater or the furnace is placed inside the building envelope, then you would need to do a worst case test to make sure it's not going to be unsafe for the homeowner or the residents. Okay. So that's not always going to be necessary, but if it is, it will be recorded in the photos from the report and you will take action if needed. All right. Next part here. This is going to be appliance 1. Appliance 2 is typically going to be your furnace and your water heater. All right. So I'm just going to type in here furnace and DWH for domestic water heater. That's just the shorthand for it. Next is the location. So where was this at? So I'm going to go back here and just show you the photos. I already created this photo report. I may create a training later for how to do this, but it's just already put together for simplicity for this presentation. All right, so I'm going to scroll through my photos here. So you see that's the water heater. This is up in the attic. All right, so we're going to put attic for water heater for the location. All right, and then move on over. Move on down to my photos. Okay, that's your furnace, and it is in the attic as well. And you see this is a natural gas furnace. So anytime you see this flue pipe, that's obviously natural gas. And then this water heater here, you can see does not have a flue pipe coming out of it. And it's just got this big electric cord coming into it. That's an electric water heater. All right. So furnace, we'll put attic. All right, this next part here, this is your outside temperature right here. So you record that during the inspection. Typically, that is my very first photo I take when I get to every single house. First thing I do is I pull out my phone and I take a photo of the ambient temperature outside. All right, that impacts some of our readings that we're going to get here. So we're going to just go ahead and put 87 in each of these places where it's necessary. All right, so first off, it's outside temperature right there. And then second, if you see down here where it says draft calculation, so look at this number here. Right now it reads negative 2.75. Once we change right here where it says outside temp, that's going to change. So we're going to put 87. All right, so now you can see we've got a negative 0.575 is our minimum acceptable reading for our draft. All right, now draft is something you get from the furnace. It's basically how much suction is pulling the combustion gases coming out of the furnace, how much is being pulled out through the flue pipe at the top of the furnace. All right. So we're going to need that here in just a moment. All right. So when you fill in this ambient temperature, make sure you put it next to all the appliances and down here at the bottom for the draft calculation. So it gives you what your minimum acceptable range is. All right. Moving on, so for the furnace, this first part here, when we talked about worst case setup, again, you only do a worst case if it's inside the building envelope. And as we just showed, both the furnace and the water heater are both outside the building envelope. So in this case, the worst case, this is both applicable for the worst case setup. It's going to be not applicable for this, okay? All right. And then next, for the furnace, for a natural gas furnace, what you're going to enter for spillage, there is no spillage because with the natural gas furnace, modern natural gas furnaces, they completely close the system at the end. Basically, after the combustion gases exit the system, they go up through this flue pipe, and there is nowhere for additional air to come in. All right, so it's forced into this tube, and what gets the combustion gases out of the attic is just the natural draft of the heat going up the tube because heat rises, right? So what we're going to enter here is going to be forced air because it's a closed system. There's nowhere for air to draft into it, nowhere for spillage to occur. All right. So next is going to be your draft. Where you're going to get your draft information from is during the inspection, you're going to test for it. You always take your draft at your flue pipe, at least 1 foot above any curves or any bends in your pipe. You can see in this case it's a -6. So we'll go back to our report. That is well above the -0.575. All right. So -6 is greater than -0.575 in absolute value, right? We'll put -6 here, so that's good. Where that furnace passes. All right. Next is going to be your efficiency and your undiluted CO, or let me just start with the efficiency first. So efficiency is going to go back to our readings that we got at this furnace. Okay. In this case, it's right here. So you see where it says EFF. So it's 83.7% efficient. All right. So that's based on the actual readings we got at the furnace with our combustion analyzer during the test. All right. So 83.7 is your efficiency. All right. That is not the same as EX air. That you see that percentage there. It's not the same as CO and none of that. It's going to be EFF is your efficiency. All right. So don't get that confused with any other acronyms or percentages that might show up. It's 87%. It's typically going to be around 80% because this is a standard furnace is 80% efficient, and that's what this one is. All right. Okay, next up is undiluted CO or COO. What that means is that's the same as saying CO air free. All right. So when we go back to our readings here, you can see the top here, it says COAF. That stands for CO air free right there. All right. So in this case, it's 18 parts per million. So CO air free or COO is how it's sometimes represented. That is not the same as CO here, right? CO is carbon monoxide. COO or COAF for CO air free is a different reading. All right. So in this case, CO is 10, CO air free is 18. 18 is what we're looking for. All right. COO or CO air free. Okay. So next, we're going to move on to our water heater. In this case, you would follow some of the same information entering on the water heater. But in this case, this was an electric water heater. So we're just going to enter all that based on it being electric. So base pressure in worst case, again, you're going to put not applicable. For the rest of these, since it's an electric water heater, none of these carbon monoxide readings are going to apply. So we're just going to put electric for each of these just to explain why we're not entering the information. You still put these in here just so you don't get questions from the office, like, because if it's blank, they're going to be like, oh, wait, did he forget to enter that? So we go ahead and enter it just to avoid additional unnecessary questions. All right. Okay, moving on. That completes your CAS info tab. All right, with the with the signatures down here, right? That is your CAS info tab. It takes a little bit of work and setup to create this, but once you do, it's fairly straightforward. It's just about entering the information in the right place. All right. Okay, moving on to the next tab here. You can see down here, this is the MZBDDB form. All right, so that stands for multi-zone blower door duct blaster form. All right, so this is where you're going to enter information from your inspection regarding your duct blaster. Let me zoom in a little bit for you. Excel just spazzed out a little bit. Okay. So in this case, the reason this exists, the reason it's called multi-zone, uh, it's your multi-zone form, is because each of these zones is created in case you have multiple air conditioning systems. All right. So sometimes you'll see, especially in two-story houses in Texas, you'll see the upstairs has one AC system and the downstairs has another AC system. You can also see sometimes large one-story houses, they'll have one system on one side of the house, another on the other side of the house. Okay. So in cases like that, if you had two systems, you would separate them into two different zones here. Okay. In this case, we only have one, so we're just going to focus on zone one. All right. So your square footage is going to be, again, if you only have one AC system, it's going to be the total square footage for the whole house. So in this case, it's 2,087. All right. So that is just our total square footage for the entire house in this case. All right. Now this next part, this is your total for your duct blaster. You can see total duct blaster ring right here. So this is your duct blaster information. Total, where you're going to get that from is you're going to go back to your photos and you're going to look for, in my case, I'm using this manometer for my duct blaster. Okay. So you're going to enter, you're going to look at the photos and capture the information that's recorded here. All right. So in this case, you can see with this reading pressure flow at 25, I've got the duct blaster at a set at -25 in this photo. I've got it set on ring 3 and my reading is 116. Okay. So with 116 at -25 on pressure flow at 25. All right. So I'm going to go back here. So this is your total reading, is that first reading that you get on your report that's going to show up in the photos. Your first reading is going to be 116. All right. So next, the second photo, the way I do things, the second photo is going to be right here. This one, you're going to have your blower door running. So you're going to have the blower door running to have the whole house at -25 pascals. Your settings here are going to be pressure flow for your reading, for your manometer. And the house is going to be at 0 pascals. The reading inside the house is going to be -0. I'm sorry, that's your reading inside the ductwork is going to be -0. Now your reading that you get here is with reference to outside. So this is actually going to be with the house set to -25 and the duct set to 0. Your reading that you get here is going to be how much air is actually escaping to the outside when the system is running. All right. So in this test, this is how much air is coming directly from the outside, from all the little gaps and cracks and seals in the entire ductwork. That's what this reading is. All right. So we're going to get 70 and we're on ring 3. All right. So this number here, 70. And for both of these, it's going to be ring 3. All right. And again, you can do your drop down or you can just type it on your computer. All right. So that's 116 total was our first reading right here. And then 70 with reference to outside as our second photo. All right. So that's that right there. Next, this is going to be your supply and your return, but this is going to be your operating pressures. Okay. So your operating pressures are another reading you're going to take during the assessment. And what this is your readings that you get at your supply and this is your supply here, your supply plenum in the attic or in the house, wherever you're at, your supply plenum and your return plenum. Okay. So if you move on down, you can see anything that shows up during these photos, it's a large negative number. That's going to be the reading from the return plenum. All right. So that's -45.6. So here for return, we'll put -45.6. And then usually right after that, there you go. That's the supply plenum. It'll be a large positive number. In this case, it's 28.3. So for that, we're going to put 28.3. All right. So that's your operating pressures. That's with your system running, with your system turned on, the readings you get in the attic at the supply and return plenums. Okay. All right. Moving on. If you do take any additional readings during the inspection, over here, this is going to be basically, these are kind of like spot checks. So you can take these during the inspection if you want to. It's basically giving the contractor additional information. In this case, they put like T-stat, outlet, switch. So they're putting sort of things that we typically see leakage from. In this case, I'm going to change these because the readings that I actually got were from the fans throughout the house. So first one is going to be I'm going to put MST BTH FAN. So that's going to be master bath fan, just abbreviated. That's going to be my first one. The second one is going to be utility fan. And then last one is going to be HLL BTH FAN for hall bath fan. All right. So those are just some readings that I took during the inspection, that I've got written in my notes. You can do these any way you want. They're not completely necessary, but it's one of those things that helps the contractor know what to focus on, and it's good for you to take notes on so you don't forget that these things should be addressed to help reduce air infiltration in the home. All right. So first one here was master bath fan is 47 CFM for leakage. Next one is 50 for the utility fan, and then the hall bath fan was 49.5. So quite a bit of leakage from those. All right. Okay. Oh, and that's not actually CFM, that's pascals during the test. So that's a different term there. Okay. So that's it. So you're not entering a ton of information on this page, but it is very important because it gives you sort of the framework for more information later. And the information on this tab feeds into this tab. You can see that 116 and that 70 are already entered there. And then the supply and return, that's also there as well. So that's very important. The information entered on this tab carries over into this one. So again, don't ever skip or delete or move something because it can affect the rest of the report. All right. So I'll zoom in a little bit for you here. Next part here. So again, I highlighted everything in yellow that needs to be filled in. So first part here, this is going to be your blower door reading. Okay, that's what this tab is BDDB. It's blower door and duct blaster is what this is standing for. All right, oh, and there it is right there. Blower door, duct blaster data sheet. All right, this is the formatting on this one is a little bit annoying, but it's because it's from the TDHCA and they set it however they want. All right, so to get our blower door number, we're going to go back to our photos from our report. I'm sorry, go to our photo report, and then you're looking for this big red door. All right, this is always going to, I always do this photo like this so it's easy to see. All right, so you can see this is at -50. We got 1,383 CFM. All right, that's cubic feet per minute of air at -50 pascals. That was set on ring A. You can see ring A in the background. All right. So we'll go back to our report. Okay, so that was 1383. And then you're going to select your ring here. You'll select ring A. All right. This part's a little annoying. You do need to enter, that was ring 3. You got to put ring 3 here as well. That's separated because basically you could have, with a multi-zone, you could have multiple rings for different settings. And so that's why it doesn't automatically carry over for this part. Okay. Okay. Next, you're going to do your pressure pan readings. This one is going to be based on something that you did. Basically, you manually wrote down during testing. Right. So I usually write this down on piece of paper as I'm testing. You can pull up your report and do this on your computer when you're at the house doing the testing, but I typically just write it down so it's just easier to type everything in when I'm sitting at my desk instead of typing it away when I'm standing there. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and type all this in real quick. First off, I like to start my return, so it's going to be rear RA for rear return error, FWD for forward return error. All right, entry. I'm going to go ahead and fill this in, so feel free to fast forward a little bit. And obviously, like I like to use abbreviations here, so it's not quite so tedious. But just make sure you make it long enough and make sense so that people can follow it. Because the final inspector will have to follow along with whatever you fill in here. So they need to make it sure so that they can follow what you're doing. All right. And again, where these readings are coming from, it's all on a piece of paper that I wrote everything down on during the inspection. All right. So 0.8, 0.6, 0.5. Okay. So those are our readings from the pressure pans during the inspection. All right, next is going to be your CFM for your exhaust fans. Okay, so in this case, we did have exhaust fans in the kitchen, the hall bath, and the master bath. All right, so you're going to record all of your bathrooms, regardless of whether they have fans or not. Don't worry about the utility. That doesn't affect the things we focus on. But any bathroom that does have a shower or a bathtub is going to be included in these calculations. All right. This is called your ASHRAE readings, and this has to do with how much ventilation the house has. All right. So first off, your kitchen. We're going to go back to our photos. All right. I typically do these readings at the end of the inspection. So they're usually towards the bottom of our photo report. Okay, so first off, this is the bottom of the microwave. All right, so this is the reading we got in the kitchen. So you can see this tool here uses this manometer. This is your pressure readings, but this is, notice the pressure reading here is in pascals, all right? Whereas on our report, they're asking for CFM, okay? So that says -2, but don't put a -2 here because that's not what they're asking for. All right. We need to take that -2 and convert it to CFM. All right. So that's what this little chart on our tool does. All right. So CFM, zoom out a little for you. At E1, you see a little button for E1, shows that that's what the reading is set to. So we're going to go -2 on E1. Right there, -2, E1. So that's a 62. Okay. So for CFM, we're going to put 62. Do not put -2 because that's just wrong and they're going to know that you don't know what you're talking about. All right. So for this one, I'll just put HLL BTH for hall bath, and we'll do master bath as well. Sorry, I'm a stickler for formatting. Okay. Okay. So now we'll go back. So which one of these is master bath and hall bath? I wrote these down before I deleted the photos, so I usually give myself little hand signals to tell which one's which. So this is our hall bath. This one is on E2 at 3.8. All right, you can read this one a lot better. So E2, negative 3.8. Okay, so 3.8 on E2 is a 40. All right, so this is our hall bath. So here we're going to put 40. And then master bath. It's going to be our other one right there. So this one is also on E2, and this one's a negative 3. So 3 on E2 is 36. All right. And again, remember we're doing CFM, not pascals. So 36 for E2. Okay. So now, does it terminate outside? It's asking you, does it terminate outside? That's something you need to check for during the inspection. So if you will look at what I showed you earlier for the microwave. So when I was testing it, I checked if it vented to the outside. I tested it, I turned it on, and I saw that it has this ventilation pipe here. So I tested it, and it does vent to the outside. So does it vent out? Yes. Terminate outside? Yes. And there's even a note there for you that explains a little bit more. All right. Next, does the hall bath, does it terminate outside? Yes, it does. I checked that one when I was in the attic. There are lots of photos here. See if I can find the one that has that real quick. Hard to see here, but I think I took a photo later, actually. There you go. So there's actually some pipes off in the corners, sort of back in the hidden a little bit behind the rafters and joists. But they actually do vent to the outside. You can also tell this by looking at the exterior to see how many vent pipes you have on the outside. So in this case, both of these did terminate outside. Next is, do they have openable windows? So during the inspection, that's another thing you're gonna need to look for. In this case, yes, the kitchen did. And then for the bathrooms, no, they did not. Both of them did not, okay? Next part here, this is, you see it says number of bedrooms plus 1. All right, very simple. How many bedrooms does the house have? And then add 1. All right, in this case, it was a 3-bedroom house, so I'm gonna put 4. Number of occupants, how many occupants were there? In this case, it was a 2. All right, this is important for something later. It's called the ASHRAE calculation. It's basically how much ventilation does a house have. And it's going to be higher, either number of bedrooms plus 1 or number of occupants. You're going to select whichever is higher. All right, so in this case, it's going to be a 4. All right, and the next ASHRAE dwelling height, this is your highest ceiling in the house. And that's, in this case, is going to be an 8. They were all 8-foot ceilings, so that's all we're going to select there. Okay. All right. We're almost done with the first section here. So I'm going to do one more tab and then we'll stop for this video and continue on with the next one. Okay, so this next part here is your attic vent calculator. Okay. I apologize, there's some background noise. My lawn guys are outside right now. Okay. So you can see up here at the top, this says approximate ventable attic square footage. All right, so this first part, this is something you're going to need to calculate manually. And this is something that is, again, it's based on your, it is based on your sketch of the house. All right, so it's going to be the entire area of the house minus any things that may reduce how much of the house you can actually add insulation to. Okay, so we're trying to create no, I'm sorry, not insulation. In this case, it's ventable square footage. So we're calculating how much of the house in the attic space needs ventilation, needs to be able to breathe to keep the house cool. Okay, so in this case, if you had any, let's say you had a garage, say there was a garage here, that would be subtracted from the square footage that you could do insulation on. But for ventable square footage, you're going to keep that. You're going to include ventable square footage. All right, so if there was a garage right here, the house would be like, roughly 400 square feet smaller for the square footage of the house. But for the ventable square footage, you would actually include that back in. Okay. So in this case, our ventable square footage is going to be the same as the house because there were no vaulted ceilings, um, no closed off spaces. So it's just going to be 2,087, same as the square footage. All right. Next, you are going to fill in all of your attic ventilation. That's going to be from your sketch as well. I typically put all my ventilation up here at the top right on each page. So you can see here we've got a couple different types. We've got some ridge and we've got 12 feet. And the way I've got this reported, we have ridge and I put 12 feet. This like little single dot, that single dash here is for 12 feet, 24 feet, and 4 feet. All right, so to add that up, 12 plus 24 plus 4 is 40. And then you multiply that by 12, and that gives you 480. Okay, so the reason you multiply by 12 is we're trying to get our length in inches. All right, so we had that ridge, so we'll select ridge, but instead of 40 feet, we're going to put 480 inches. The reason that is it's just a way of not everything that you're going to be calculating is going to be in feet. So they put it in inches so you can be more accurate in a smaller unit. All right. Now with ridge, the width is you're going to have one opening on each side of the ridge. So width is always going to be 2 for ridge. It just has to do with the way it's put together, how much ventilation you have per foot of ridge. All right. Next is if you wanted to, you could do 3 lines that say ridge, and you could do a 12-foot piece, a 24-foot piece, and a 4-foot piece. It's completely up to you, but it gives you the same effect if you just add them all up together. If you do add them together, you just have one. And if you were going to do each one individually, you could do one. But if you had like individual soffits, you would count how many soffits you have and how large they are. All right. So next is your vent mesh. So for ridge, I'm always going to use 1/4 inch. This is basically how restrictive is the type of ventilation you have. If you got, if you got small soffit screens that are very, very tight, you use 1/16 inch mesh. If you got large soffit screens that are allow a lot of air through, you might use 1/4 inch mesh. But yeah, typically for upper ventilation, it's going to be 1/4 inch. All right. And then we'll go back to our sketch again. So I've got continuous soffit hardy. So hardy soffit is just a type of soffit that's installed in newer homes. It's basically the length of each of the walls is going to be the length of your soffit, plus or minus a foot. Sometimes they stick over a little bit. The eaves they may extend a little bit further than the length of the walls. So you can see here I've got 62, 18, 18, 3. So 62 plus 18 plus 18 plus 3. That's 101. And again, we're going to multiply by 12 to convert it to inches. All right, so that's 1,212. All right, so we're going to put C soffit for continuous soffit. 1212 for 1,212 inches of soffit. Now, hardy soffit is always 5 inches wide. I know that just from how many times I've checked them. So you feel free to measure it when you're doing the inspection if you'd like. Again, I'm going to put quantity of 1 because I added all these together. You can do them on separate lines if you want to. That's up to you. All right. Now watch this restriction value, this net free area. All right. So if you do that 1/4 inch, it's going to be very high. It's 31. If you go to 1/16, it's going to be a little bit lower, but for hardy soffit, that is correct. 1/16 is going to be the measurement you want. All right. So when we scroll down here, you're going to answer this next question right here. At the completion of the project, will venting be split 50-50 between high and low? So right here, this is your total for your venting. All right. Oops, it's not going to let me. Okay, there you go. So if I select that, it's adding the total from this part up here, right? So is between your high and your low, is that split 50-50? No, because you got 5 high, 18 and a half low. So no, it's not even close to 50-50. So you're going to leave that as a no, and then you scroll down here. This is going to be your final number that you want to look at. If this is negative, you need to add more ventilation for the home to be to have enough ventilation. All right. So just to show you what that looks like, all these numbers calculate together. So if I was to come up here and delete this, okay, now you saw a lot of my ventilation went away. Oh, now I don't have enough ventilation. Okay. So I would need to add more ventilation in order to make this house passable. All right. In this case, we don't have any problems because we have plenty of ventilation. So I'm going to change that back to what it actually is. Okay. So again, if you did have a negative number, you would want to add more ventilation here in order to get that number to be a positive. All right. Okay. So that completes this first section here. What we did, I'll just go back through it real quick. We went through the first few tabs here. Just to give you kind of an idea, those are the summary tabs. These are the signature tabs up here at the beginning. And then we went through the CAS info, multi-zone blower door, and attic vent calc. That's sort of the first part of each report whenever you're entering things. The next section, we will get into the whole house assessment tab, and that is a much larger part. But we'll get into that for the next video. All right, thank you.